Hey, good afternoon. I'm Tre Tailor with Coping with COVID, information on the pandemic and updates to help you thrive and survive COVID-19. I'm Tre Tailor, and starting to be a familiar face here. House Minority Leader and Attorney Todd Rutherford joins us today. Thank you again, Todd, for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. And as much as I love being on the show, I am sick of coping with COVID, and I hope
I
it goes
know.
away.
Well, you know what? Time will tell. As
Yeah.
far as that, I don't know that we'll ever, and I think you mentioned this the first time you were on, I don't think we'll ever stop coping with it. I think for at least for a long time, we'll be dealing with the fallout from it.
Unfortunately, I have to agree with you. And that was part of the press conference yesterday.
Yeah.
Asking the governor to using the right metric to see how it is that we are dealing with it. We've spoken before about using hospitalization numbers because that, I believe, is the best indicator of where we are. Looking at DHEX numbers, which we've already talked about, 72% of that number that they continue to give has already recovered, according to them. And then when you see the article that I saw today, Avery Wilkes in the state newspaper said that a private lab had been holding results for a month, and then they just dumped those results on the market, which shot up the number of positives. We cannot use testing as an indicator because it is so inadequate in terms of when did they get tested, at what stage did they get tested, who did they get tested by, and when were they given the results. We need to look at rates of hospitalization. That was part of my press conference yesterday, asking the governor to use a metric which we can talk about and know where it is every day, and it is an accurate number based on who's in the hospital that day. In doing so, I believe we can determine that South Carolina is again ready to take that next baby step, I think, which is allowing people to eat outside at restaurants on a table that has been sanitized, served by someone wearing a mask and gloves. Now, the next step after that, I'm not exactly sure because I don't know who is waiting in line to say, hey, I think I can safely reopen. We are not going to have a broad-based, everybody just go at the gate, flip on a light switch, and just go out. It's not going to happen. And because it's not going to happen, we've got to look at baby steps in order to reopen the economy.
Right. So those restaurants, obviously, that have outside seating or those that can create outside seating, is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. Because right now, I don't believe, honestly, that a restaurant could open up and go back to the way that it used to be.
Absolutely.
And I've talked to restaurant owners about separating bar stools, about running at 50% capacity. But I think we have to take a first step. And that first step is outdoor seating. A lot of restaurants in Columbia have it. And those that don't, we can look at renting tables or using tables to see what that does and whether it creates a manageable risk. Because that's what this is about, creating manageable risk. We know that people that drive the Charleston risk getting in an accident. We know that in the rain, that risk goes up exponentially because our highways are dramatically inadequate. But the risk is still manageable. And that's what we're looking for with COVID-19, looking at how we restart our economy, get people gradually back to work, and do so in a safe manner.
Well, Todd, I want to come back to the issue of renting tables or, making sure that there are enough restaurants or restaurants that can facilitate an outside seating situation. But you talked about the metric to correctly identify what the numbers are, what people are testing positive, what people, have coronavirus in our city, in our state right now. So what are your thoughts about what that metric looks like? I mean, we're already, we've got the DHEC numbers. And of course, as you say, there are labs that are holding test results and reporting them. And again, spiking up the numbers. So what does that metric look like to you?
That metric is rates of hospitalization, because we know right now this morning that 6 people at MUSC woke up with COVID-19. We know that because they report it every morning. We know that that number is down from when I was on the show last, and it was 10 people. We know that they have been consistently under 10 in a population as large as Charleston's. They've been under 10 for weeks now. We can be proud of that number, and we can look at isolating Charleston to see what baby steps we can take there. I am told that 6 includes at least 2 members of one family. And so we can look at that, isolate that data, and extrapolate from that South Carolina is okay to take a next baby step. We know that TRMC in Orangeburg, the Regional Medical Center in Orangeburg, over the weekend had 0 hospitalizations because of COVID-19. You will hear a number of people say, and they are right to say, that we don't know how many people have this because they're not getting tested. The problem is that we can assume that a lot more people have it. But what we know is that it doesn't make them sick enough to go to the hospital, then that might actually be a good thing. The more people that have COVID-19 that don't have to go to the hospital, that don't ever get sick, can create something that scientists say is called herd immunity, which if we are getting it and we all you and I get tested and we actually had it and didn't even know it, that is what we would want. That's going to create hopefully some degree of immunity in us so that we don't get it anytime soon. Now, we all agree that scientists don't know how much immunity it creates, how long that lasts, but for every virus similar to this, according to Dr. Bell, people do develop some type of immunity. So if people are not getting hospitalized, it's a good thing. If people are not getting sick, it's a good thing. We know we're going to have to live with this. And so rates of transmission are going to continue to be out there. It is not that evil if people are not sick enough to have to go to the hospital.
But what about those people who are like asymptomatic, that, because there are people who are asymptomatic and are carriers. So how do we add that into the equation?
We're going to have that with every single disease. And as I was reminded a couple of weeks ago by a doctor at MUSC, we have to shut down the MUSC ER occasionally, several times a year, because of the flu, because so many people have it and it is so deadly. And it's the flu, which we've all lived with and grown up with. I don't believe that we're going to be any different with COVID-19, except it might be worse in terms of shutting it down if we see spikes in transmission, if we see a spike and people are getting it. Once we get the granular data to show us where they're getting it, how they're getting it, we'll be better prepared to deal with it. But what we cannot do is continue to have a population of 5.5 million people totally shut out of the workforce because we have 320 people in the hospital, because that economy can't live long enough to provide help and resources to those people who are not in the hospital and don't have COVID-19.
I want to thank everyone for watching Coping with COVID. We are talking to House Minority Leader Todd Rutherford from Columbia, South Carolina. Clifford Rollison says hello to both of us. He's in Ohio. I think you are, Clifford. Coco Chanel says she doesn't even want it. Keep it. I don't think any of us want it. I don't think any of us want it. So I think you're in the majority there. So,
you can have it.
Exactly. Look, you can have it.
That's right.
So listen, Todd. Okay, so back to if the governor agrees to open up at least outside dining, and I want to go back after we talk about this. I want to ask you, what has he said? So who's going to fund? If I am the businesses who don't already have outside seating but want to participate, I mean, they're already strapped for money. Maybe they didn't get any of this money, that's out there. Who's funding the tables, or do they qualify?
It would have to go to the business. They would have to decide whether that fits in their business model. And what we're trying to do is, again, provide baby steps to normalcy and see how that works, and making sure that it does work for the restaurants and for the patrons before we look at other steps. What I don't want to see is us just opening up the restaurants, saying that, okay, we can go to 25% capacity, 50% capacity, and not knowing whether these restaurants can make it. South Carolina right now has some of the most beautiful weather anywhere in the world. We need to be taking advantage of it, seeing how safely we can do it, and making sure that we're at least kickstarting the economy for those restaurants that are able to take advantage of it.
So you're saying at least start with those who have outside seating.
That's correct.
And is there a plan, though? What is the plan that you think, Todd, for those restaurants who don't have outside seating and can
Right now, there's no plan at all, because the governor hasn't responded. He hasn't answered my request, and it's now almost a week old, which is troubling because these restaurant owners want to know what they can do. Representative J.A. Moore, he was in the Post and Courier yesterday, because he is a caterer. He does have a degree in culinary arts, and he knows how hard restaurants are being hit, and the people that work for restaurants are being hit, not getting paychecks, furloughed, laid off, unemployed. These are people that need to get back to work. And this is one way that we can look at doing it. I do believe at some point we're going to take that next step of going to a 50% capacity in a restaurant. I just don't know when that is, and it's hard to tell until the governor responds to what I asked him for. The other
Well,
part,
no. Go ahead. What were we going to say, Todd?
there was a group that preceded my press conference, mainly from the upstate, mainly Tea Party Republicans led by Jonathan Hill and Representative Long and former Senator Lee Bright. And there were others, I can't remember who they were, but they wanted to be able to comprise a board of people that would look at whether beauties and barbershops and spas could reopen because they believe they can do so safely. Quoting those same numbers, they also had about 500,000 signatures, I believe.
Yes.
That were people that were ready to go back and put themselves at risk in order to get their hair and nails done. And so, that's part of this economy and part of the world that we live in, that there's a risk associated with everything. And they have a number of people that are ready to assume that risk in order to get their hair and nails done.
So Marvell Williams Mendenhall says, Todd, do you think we're opening too soon?
I don't think we're open at all. And I think that right now, with the steps that the governor has taken, using rates of hospitalization, the answer is no, that we haven't opened too soon with the retail stuff that he did open and the essential businesses and the people that were non-essential that he reopened. Apparently not, because we haven't seen that huge spike. I think that taking that next step of outdoor seating at restaurants would also be a safe step. I do not think that anyone anytime soon is going to take the steps that the governor in Georgia did, opening movie theaters and bowling alleys. I think, in my opinion, it is way too soon for that. That being said, I also don't know how the government is going to do jury trials. And I'm a lawyer, and so doing jury trials is essential to my business. But I don't see how we're going to force people 50 and older to sit in rooms with other strangers who are breathing and coughing and touching on things. That being said, one of the things that is coming up very quickly, we have an election coming up at the beginning of June. We have poll workers who work pretty much volunteer to work these elections. A number of them are over the age of 50, which we know should be a protected class because of COVID-19. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the governor is going to do about it, but I would suggest that everybody call and ask the governor's office how they are going to protect our poll workers come election day, because right now there is no plan to do that.
Yeah. We have another question from Terry Gilly. He wants to know, do you think it's too risky to open up without knowing all of the ins and outs of how long the disease will last and if it's going to have a second wave? You say?
So by open up, I think that, again, just making that step of restaurants and outdoor seating, other than that, I don't think that this state can move forward unless we allow protections for people over the age of 50, very much protection of people that are over the age of 60, and in particular, Black men in that category. Without providing those protections, I don't think that we can open up. But I think that those of us that are looking at the data that know we're going to live with this, our version of open up is, again, just baby steps. It ain't going back to normal. And I think we need to all disavow ourselves of that notion that somebody's going to flip a switch tomorrow morning and we're going to go back to normal, because we're not.
Yeah. Terry Marvell, thank you so much for watching Coping with COVID. I'm Tre Tailor. Attorney Todd Rutherford has joined us. I have a text question from Maxine, Todd, and she wants to know that if a worker refuses to go back to work at a restaurant that may be open with outside seating, does that cut off their employment?
If someone is currently receiving unemployment because they are laid off or furloughed, and the request comes for them to go back to work and they do not go, technically that person would be cut off from receiving any benefits for unemployment. So they would have to go back to work. If that person falls into a protected class, that the class that I'm suggesting, those are the people that we need to protect. However, the legislature is not in session to protect them right now. And so what I would suggest is that they make sure that they cover their face, that they wear gloves. And the only good part is that according to DHEC, about 2,000 people in this state of 5.5 million have COVID-19. I know that's not going to make them feel any better, but at some point, we've got to protect those people that we know fall in that category that it is very deadly for.
Right. And I think she was talking about maybe some of those people that maybe one of the restaurants are open and they have outside seating. I think that she was talking about that in particular.
I think those people, and remember, my request is that they would have to wear gloves and masks in order to serve food. So that is about the level of protection that a lot of our frontline workers have been using, and they have successfully, to a great degree, fended off COVID-19 and from catching it. So I think that should work, and I would hope it would work for restaurant workers.
So you said you mentioned this to the governor over a week ago, and of course you had your press conference yesterday, and no reply.
No reply, and I know that the Republicans that preceded me with their press conference had not heard a reply either.
Yeah. What do you think about what they say, the whole hair salon thing? Of course, and I'm thinking, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong, the governor has restricted that particularly because it's more face-to-face, more close contact.
That's correct. And, it's one of those where if you did it in a way that, and I'm guessing here, I haven't ventured into it because I haven't studied it. I cut my own hair, as everybody can see. That's why I look bad. So, it's hard for me to say because I cut my own hair. I'm not familiar with what it takes. But if they're wearing masks and PPEs and they change them out after every customer, I don't know if they're taking up too many PPEs. I don't know whether that's safe because it's just not a familiar ground for me.
Yeah. All right. Well, the AP did a poll over the weekend. It says that the majority of people polled, and, you can poll whoever, don't think it's time to lift restrictions.
But yeah, I agree. I don't think we should lift restrictions. I think we should take baby steps. Okay. And, those people that hear me out understand that I think that lifting restrictions as a whole would kill a whole bunch of people, and we cannot do it. But we have to take baby steps. Right. And it's not a matter of a polling issue. It's a matter of a public policy issue, because if we do not, people that are getting unemployment checks, people that are getting workers' comp, people that are at home working for state government, but they're at home now, those checks are going to run out. The government will run out of money. In South Carolina, we must have a balanced budget every year. We don't print money. And so if we don't get people back to work, and I think we can do so baby steps and get it back safely. If we don't do that, we're all going to be sitting here in a lot of trouble.
Yeah. Well, the governor recently, I think yesterday, extended the state of emergency to 15 additional days. What does that mean for us specifically?
What I hope it means is that he is not following our president, Donald Trump, who talks about the 2 weeks of declining numbers, because as I've spoken about earlier, the testing doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. And the CDC guidelines coming out of that White House are as ambiguous as everything else that White House does. He doesn't say which numbers we should use, how we should come about those numbers. So again, I would advocate we start using rates of hospitalization. But even when you look at the CDC guidelines that talk about the steps that the White House has promoted, step 1 is groups of no greater than 10 people. Step 2 is groups of no greater than 50 people. I don't know how they even came up with this stuff, but when you hear your president say that it's okay to start drinking cleaning products and bleach, then you kind of know what we're dealing with this White House. They're ridiculous. They've been ridiculous. And I hope that the governor is not following them as to why he gave us 2 more weeks. Right. But there is a natural occurrence under a state of emergency that in order to still issue orders, the governor does have to continue the state of emergency.
Okay. Do you think that 2 weeks also means that he is not going to respond to your request or even the upstate representative's request about the hair salons?
Given the number of people that I know are calling the governor's office looking for responses to various things, I'm not disappointed that he hasn't responded to me. I know that I have a phone call with the governor's office at 4:00 with SC Due, the Department of Unemployment Workforce, to see what's going on with those numbers and how they're responding. So I'll have interaction with them, but I'm not disappointed that he didn't respond to me. I'm not encouraged that he didn't respond either.
Right.
Restaurant owners and their ability to survive.
Right. Well, look, you said that he didn't respond either to those upstate senators. So it's not about you, obviously. He's just not responding. So
I'm not offended either.
Right.
Yeah.
Kimberly Diamond Todd says, what if the governor says that non-essential people can go back to work, but some of the people have serious underlying health issues and can't go back to work until the pandemic is over, but still need unemployment? Is this a potential lawsuit if unemployment stops giving them money weekly? That's kind of like what Maxine asked earlier.
Yeah, no, it's not a pending lawsuit. And the other side is this pandemic is not going to be over. And I think we've got to realize that. And I think that Donald Trump kind of sold people on this belief that it's just going to go away. We've got it under control. Well, that's simply not true. And you're not going to find a single epidemiologist that will say that we're not going to have to live with this. Because of that, I think that the legislature is going to have to act and protect those people. But at a certain point, it is hard to tell the difference between people that simply don't want to go back to work and people that are called back to work and don't want to go for some valid reason. Right. And because of that, the government right now is not going to provide protections to anyone that is asked to go back into a work environment. However, I don't think that the governor is moving in that direction without advising that South Carolina Accelerate panel or whatever that is.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's going to be. But there have got to be protections put in place. And if you think about it this way, those protections, not just for the workers, but if you've got an office and you've got, say, 40 people in that office and one of them tests positive for COVID-19, you're going to have to shut down. Yeah. That's not what any business owner wants. They're going to have to figure this out as well, because even if the janitor, who they've probably ignored for all these years, even if he has it and he shows up and starts touching things, they've got a problem. Yeah. And so we've got to figure this out. But the pandemic is not going to be over.
Hey, thank you, Kimberly, so much for your question. So we talked earlier about BMW and Boeing both starting to resume their, open up their plants this week. What are your thoughts about that? And do you know how they're going to handle that?
I don't know how they're going to handle it, but I have been fortunate enough to go visit both of those plants. And let me just tell you, things that we do in South Carolina are amazing and world class. Boeing in particular being one and BMW the other. Those plants are so automated that to a great degree, in talking with someone from Boeing yesterday, Ashley Holbrook, she says that they're going to maintain social distancing while in the plant to the degree that they can, and that they think that they can do it safely because of how large the plants are and how automated they are.
Okay, so does that mean that they're a limited number of employees?
I haven't heard all the plans.
Okay.
But I can tell you that it's no different for them. They don't want to end up like the Tyson Foods, where you got an outbreak, because that is not good business for anybody involved.
Yeah, I know that's right. Kimberly says you need to run for governor, Todd. Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, but I don't know the state where they're ready to elect a black man with a bald head, but we'll look for one.
But look, that's what they said about Barack Obama, Todd. I mean, you know.
But, Barack Obama was born in Hawaii and lived in Chicago, so it's a little bit easier for him and doesn't have to racially insinuate things to people like I do. So, but we'll see if we can find a state. But thank you for that.
Oh, Kimberly. So Queen Brooklyn says the country really is catching hell right now. She says Florence County, top 15th in the nation for accelerating infection numbers. Queen, thank you so much for your comment. She said she had to look twice. She thought it was Erykah Badu. Thank you, Queen. People say that all the time. I don't see it, but people say that all the time. That's a whole different story. But go ahead, Todd.
There was a spike in Florence. A number of those persons were in a nursing home. The others were in a facility where other people were housed, groups of people were housed. And I think that's where that spike came from. You saw that as it was reflected in rates of hospitalization. And that's what I mean about being able to catch these things. And so knowing that that existed, now that that has slightly passed, being that it has gone through there, infected a number of people, but hopefully it can't reinfect them. We've got to deal with nursing homes. Nursing homes are
that's a big thing.
But I continue to state that South Carolina is different. What we know, and we've talked about it before on this program, our rates of transmission, our rates of positives in DEC numbers are about 10%, and MUSC's numbers are about 6%. Nationwide, if you look at New York, their numbers are about 20%. Nationwide, we know about 5 million people have been tested, about 993,000 are positive, which is a rate of about 20%. We're just not there. And thank God we're not there, but we're not. So we're separate a little bit from the rest of the country, enough so that, again, I think we can do safe reopenings on small items without doing dangerous things like the governor of Georgia did.
Yeah. Hey, Queen, thank you so much. Check us out on Saturday at 2:00. Terry Alexander, who is from Florence, is going to be on Coping with COVID. So thank you. Todd, you mentioned nursing homes, prisons, too. And we talked about this when you were on before. Prisons, and just every day we're getting more and more numbers, inmates, employees.
We are not doing enough. And I realize that a lot of that is going to have to be on the legislature. But we are not doing enough to spare those people that are currently incarcerated from catching COVID-19. Part of it is we have way too many people in prison. We
Right,
continue
right.
to imprison far too many, especially African-American men, and that has got to change. But right now, we need to start, and I know myself and Terry Alexander have been in touch with the governor's office, Department of Corrections, probation department, and parole to try and seek some relief for them and just haven't been successful.
Yeah, I've read that they were getting ready to release Bill Cosby because he was at risk of
Different prison system, but yes.
Yeah, oh, I'm sure. Yeah, it's a whole different prison. Yeah.
Yes.
But I
I
would
know
think
the federal government has been releasing people as well that fall into that dangerous category.
right.
South Carolina, not so much.
Right. And that's what I would say. I would think at least, as you say, that vulnerable population, those folks over 50, those with underlying heart or whatever, medical problems, and those who are not dangerous.
That's right. That's exactly.
Yeah. But I think that just goes back to how we view the incarcerated in this country.
Yeah. Our view of incarcerated people, unfortunately, is so draconian.
Yes.
And we have been so conditioned to it that we don't understand.
Right.
The bulk of the people that are in prison now for what I would consider financial crimes having to do with drugs is just far too many. And most of them are black men. And we have decimated an entire population of black males by placing them in prison and doing no good except making ourselves feel better because we put them in jail.
Oh, I know that as a black woman. As a single black woman and
That's
as
right.
a black woman with a black son,
Yes, that's very real. We have taken away role models. We have decimated the black family. Yeah. And I've talked to the Baptist Association several times about that. How you take somebody out of the family and punish the family for what an individual has done, and then make it so that they don't have visitation, so that they have to talk to each other over FaceTime. Now the rest of the world knows that, yes, FaceTime works. We can look at one another, but it is not a way to talk to family.
Yeah. Todd Rutherford is the minority house leader for South Carolina. Tom Hall says Todd is the man. Kimberly Steinman said that you're far ahead of your time. She says she loves it.
So thank you so much. Thank you so much.
So Todd, anything else? Are you getting ready to do another press conference? Because you were here last week and didn't tell me about the press conference, and then you just busted up, hey, I'm having a press conference. So thank you, Tom.
I apologize.
No, it's all good.
I'll try and do better. But no, there's nothing coming up. We're going to try and see where due is with the numbers.
Right.
And we spoke to the School Board Association this morning, just talking about how we can do more broadband Wi-Fi to give school children access to Wi-Fi that are not living in cities. It's a very difficult problem. I was out at Microsoft about 2 years ago now, trying to deal with it. And it's a difficult problem and one that we've got to work on. If children are not going to be able to be in school, we need to have them learning somehow.
Yeah. Absolutely. We're going to get a couple of school superintendents on to talk about what school is going to look like for the rest of the year. I mean, we know what it's not going to be and how they're going to celebrate those seniors.
That's a very good question. And not only that, at least they are moving on to the next segment of life. But like my children who are in 4th and 5th grades, when they go to the 6th grade, how prepared are they going to be? Right. And how do we test for that? How do we know that they're not losing a great deal in this time off and be able to deal with that loss? And I don't have the answer to that.
Yeah, because, there are some success stories, but there are some unsuccessful stories.
That's right.
Everybody is not, as you said last time, you're an attorney. I'm sure not a teacher. We're doing the best we can.
That's right.
But how do you now measure
That's right.
their education?
Well, and, and I can tell you that when I have an idea and I pose it and I get feedback, that's how I learn. That's how I go and find more research. And that's how I take my idea and try and make it better. But you're not able to do that when you're just sitting at home by yourself or your brother or sister trying to learn by reading a book or looking on an iPad. Those ideas have got to come from a group setting, and we need to try and get back to that. I just don't see that happening anytime soon.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. And those are some tough decisions to make. I mean, we're talking about employment and the economy, but that's another big thing. How do you get all of those kids from all walks of life, all neighborhoods back together and then keep them safe?
Exactly.
And we're in the midst of a pandemic that's killing folks.
That's right. That's right. And the socialization piece of it, too.
Yes.
I mean, I have 2 kids, but there are those that only have one, with an aging parent or a single parent, and it's difficult.
Yeah. And then, let's not even mention, the abusive situation. There are some people, not only children, people who are quarantined with an abuser.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So there's so many sides to this situation.
That's
And
exactly right.
listen, I don't know that either one of us have any of all of the answers,
Right.
but certainly we do appreciate you being on the front lines, working out some things. Thank you so much, Todd.
No, not even on the front lines. Those nurses and doctors, those are the people.
Oh, yeah.
I'm way behind the scenes. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And I did notice how quiet it is in your house. Today. Maybe it's because we're a little bit later in the day. I'm not sure. What you've been a drill sometimes works, but I don't know. But it is a lot quiet.
I'm not drugging the kids, Todd.
Not that I noticed.
You had to notice. You had to notice. Yeah, we'll talk about that. But anyway, the kids are okay. Let me just say that. The kids are fine. The kids, don't let Todd think I'm giving the babies.
Don't call DSS. Don't call DSS.
Don't.
It's
call
okay.
DSS. And don't call Tisha Gillens and tell her.
They're going to wake up soon. It's okay.
Absolutely. So Cynthia Watson says, hey, Todd is back. Sean DJ Livingston says, thoroughly enjoyed it, Todd and Trey, for being a man of the people. He is definitely that. He is definitely unapologetically that. So Todd Rutherford, House Minority Leader, South Carolina, thank you again so much for joining us. If people want more information about you, from you, and have a question, how can they contact you?
Go on my website, call my law office, 256-3003.
803.
I have an online presence, and I'm out and about all the time. So you can probably catch me at Lowe's or Home Depot these days.
Well, now, yeah, that's about it. Right?
But, and thank you again, Trey, a.k.a. Erica Badu, for doing this interview. I think it is extremely important. I saw the number of people that have seen the last interviews we did. And so you can tell how important it is. So thank you again.
It is. It's really very important. And I'm just honored to do it and to have you on. Coming up later on the week, we're going to talk to Gilda Cobb-Hunter. Also going to talk to Terry Alexander. We'll talk to thought leader and national best-selling author Marianne Williamson tomorrow. And then we're going to talk with Sam Davis tomorrow. Also, Todd, we all know that MUSC is doing testing in the 29203 area code tomorrow.
Yes, thank you. Can I mention that?
Yes.
Yeah, starting tomorrow at 10 o'clock at Eau Claire High School, 3 o'clock, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Go on the teleportal, see if you have the symptoms, come by and get a test. If you're walking, walk up. We're going to try and test as many people as we can to try and see how this has infiltrated 29203. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, and they're going to do a 24-hour turnaround, I heard. With the
24-hour turnaround, we're going to notify people on their cell phones, or we're going to go find them if they don't have a cell phone and try and quarantine those people that can't self-quarantine on their own. So we're trying to do whatever we can to catch up with COVID-19 in the African-American community.
So, Todd, I was going to ask Sam this tomorrow, but what do they have to do? They have to register, or is it just a walk-up?
We are asking people to go on the teleportal first to see whether they need a test. But if they can't do that, they should just show up if they think they need one, so that we are going to make sure that we are testing people that need to be tested, in particular in the African-American community.
How can they get access to the teleportal to register?
That's on DHEC's website.
Is it a DHEC thing? Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not exactly sure because, again, we're going to try and test people. That's the objective of coming. It is to try and test for as long and test as many people as we need to.
Right. So I'll do that research to see where it's on, and I'll post it. But tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday from 10 until 3 o'clock, Eau Claire High School doing free testing for COVID-19. And you'll get a 24-hour turnaround. Like I said, like Todd said, going to try to identify who those people are and then isolate them or, quarantine them so they don't go out and infect anyone else. And that's great because that is, like you said, one of the areas, any of the lower income areas, I'll say, right. Really need those tests. That's so is this the start of something, of identifying some areas that really need the tests?
Listen, MUSC is committed and they are going to come and they want to stay for as long as necessary to make sure that we are reaching that population. I know that the next step for them is going to Sumter. I know that they're going to go to Florence. Okay. We are trying to reach out to the minority community, to especially the underserved community, to make sure that they are getting the resources that they need.
All right, great. So if you know about it, please push that information out. Push this information out too. Please continue to post and share so more people can find out not only about what Todd talked about today, but also about this testing that's being done Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week, tomorrow, Thursday and Friday, from 10 until 3 at Eau Claire High School. Go to DHEC's website and make sure people are registered. But if people just drop by, they're not going to turn them away. Right, Todd?
No, we're taking walk-ups and drive-ups.
Right.
Walk-ups, drive up. Come on.
All right. As always, thank you, Todd. Thank you, Todd, so much. As always, I leave with my reading from Jesus Calling today. It says, as you look into the day that stretches out before you, you see so many choice points along the way. It's a myriad of possibilities these choices present can confuse you. Draw your mind back to the threshold of this day where I stand beside you, lovingly preparing you for what is ahead. You must make your choices one at a time, each to know that the decision that precedes it is based on. Instead of trying to create a mental map of your path along the day, focus on my loving presence within you. I will equip you, Jesus says, as you go so that you can handle whatever comes your way. Trust me to supply what you need when you need it. We sure needed those tests. I'm so glad we're going to get them tomorrow. And we always need Todd standing by us and, advocating for us. Christy Sanders says, thank you for the information. Thank you again, Todd. Once again, please like Todd's page, J. Todd Rutherford. What's the J for? I don't. John?
James.
Okay. J. Todd Rutherford. And the Rutherford Law Firm. Both of my personal pages are maxed out, but please go to my professional page, Tre Tailor and Tailor Made Productions. Like the page so that you can be updated on what's going on and more about coping with COVID. Thank you again so much, Todd. On behalf of Coping with COVID, I'm Tre Tailor. Be safe, stay well, and be blessed. Have a great afternoon.